Today, we are diving deep into Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. It's a book that's built on this one really radical idea that pretty much flips everything you thought you knew about capitalism right on its head. It's a huge claim, so yeah, let's get right into it.
And there you have it, right on the money. Thiel's whole argument in a nutshell. Competition is for losers. I mean, it's designed to shock you, right? But what is he really trying to say here? Let's unpack that.
So to really understand that bombshell of a statement, first we've got to understand the mind that it came from. Who is Peter Thiel? And what is the framework that leads him to a conclusion that, well, sounds so crazy? This is the guy. And look, he's not just some theorist. He is a genuine Silicon Valley heavyweight. We're talking about a co-founder of PayPal, the founder of Palantir, and get this, the very first outside investor in Facebook. So when he talks, people in tech listen, especially because he basically makes a career out of challenging what everyone else thinks is true.
Okay, so to get inside Thiel's head, you have to understand his two models for progress. First, there's what he calls 1 to N. Think of this as globalization. It's basically taking something that already works and just copying it over and over, making it more widely available. But then there's 0 to 1, and that's technology. This isn't copying anything. This is creating something brand new, something that has never existed before. For Thiel, that is where the magic happens. That's where real value comes from.
So if creating something totally new, going from 0 to 1, is the ultimate goal, how in the world does that lead to monopoly? This brings us to Thiel's very specific and, very controversial definition of that word.
Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. When Thiel says monopoly, he's not talking about the old-school bad guys from the board game. He means a creative monopoly, a business that is so ridiculously good at what it does, so innovative that nobody else can even come close to offering a substitute. They don't have competitors because what they've made is truly in a league of its own.
And this table just lays it all out, side by side. On one hand, you have perfect competition. Think a bunch of players all selling identical products, with profits so thin that everyone is just trying to survive day to day. But on the other hand, you have the creative monopoly. One unique product, healthy profits, and the freedom, the cash, to actually think about the future and keep innovating.
Okay, here's where it gets really, really interesting. Thiel argues that both of these types of companies, monopolies and competitors, they all lie about where they stand. They cook up these stories to hide how much power they really have, but they lie in completely opposite directions.
So monopolies lie by pretending they have way more competition than they actually do. Why? Well, they want to avoid getting regulators knocking on their door. Google is the perfect example. They will never say they dominate search. Instead, they'll say they're just a tiny fish in the huge ocean of global advertising, competing against TV, radio, billboards, you name it. It's a clever trick to mask their real power.
But then, businesses that are stuck in that brutal competition, they do the exact opposite. They lie to sound way more unique than they really are. They define their market as narrowly as humanly possible. So a local restaurant isn't just a restaurant, it's the only authentic British-Indian fusion spot in Palo Alto with a sustainable focus, when in reality, they're competing with every other place you could possibly eat dinner.
All right, so Thiel makes a pretty compelling case that these creative monopolies are actually good for innovation. But is it really that simple? Let's flip the coin over and look at the other side, the very real and very serious dangers of being the only game in town.
And this right here, this is the big question that really challenges Thiel's entire argument. If being a monopoly gives you all this freedom and cash to innovate, why does history show us so many dominant companies that just stop, that just get lazy?
I mean, history is just littered with examples. Think about giants like Microsoft, Intel, or IBM. At one point, they all seemed completely untouchable. But what happened? They got comfortable, they got bureaucratic, and they completely missed the next big thing. It's a really powerful counterargument. Sometimes having all that power doesn't drive innovation. It actually kills it.
And then you get into the really serious ethical problems. Critics will point to how this kind of unchecked power gets abused. Amazon allegedly using data from its own sellers to launch competing products, Apple's iron grip on the App Store, or Facebook's whole strategy of just buying up any company that looks like it might become a threat. This is the dark side of dominance that Thiel's theory can sometimes gloss over.
So despite all the criticism, Thiel's book is, at its heart, a playbook. So let's switch gears from debating the idea to actually looking at the strategy.
how does he say entrepreneurs should go about building one of these creative monopolies?
His strategy is actually the opposite of what you might think. Don't go after some huge, massive market. Instead, start with a tiny, super specific niche that you can absolutely completely dominate. Become the only logical choice for that small group of people. And only once you own that space can you start to methodically expand into nearby markets.
But how do you actually dominate that little niche? Well, Thiel's answer is his famous 10x rule. Your product can't just be a little bit better. It has to be at least 10 times better than the next best thing. See, a 10% improvement is just noise. Nobody cares. But a 10x improvement? Now that is a game changer. It makes the decision to switch a total no-brainer for customers.
And according to Thiel, a monopoly that can actually last needs 4 key things. First, you need proprietary technology that's really hard for anyone else to copy. Second, you want network effects, where your product actually gets more valuable as more people use it. Third, economies of scale, giving you a massive cost advantage. And finally, a super powerful brand that acts like a force field around your entire business.
So, we've laid out Thiel's powerful argument for why monopolies are good, and we've also looked at the very serious criticisms against them. And that brings us to our final section, the paradox that's really at the heart of this entire debate.
You know, the truth, like it often is, seems to be somewhere in the gray area. Thiel is not wrong. Brutal, cutthroat competition can totally kill innovation and just force everyone into a short-sighted race to zero. But the critics are also right. Unchecked monopolies often get lazy and they often abuse their power. The reality is, both extremes have some very real dangers.
So what's the answer? Maybe it's not a choice between one or the other. Perhaps the ideal system is more of a dynamic cycle, a system that rewards incredible innovation with a period of monopoly, but always keeps the threat of competition alive to keep them honest, and uses smart regulation to stop them from abusing their power.
And that right there leaves us with the essential multi-trillion-dollar question for our whole economy. How do we get all the amazing benefits of monopoly, the moonshots, the bold thinking, without suffering from all the harms like price gouging, stagnation, and the abuse of power? That is the central paradox of 0 to 1, and it's something worth thinking about.